And one guy who's been all over it is our guy, Evan Closky, WTSP, Channel 10, Tampa Bay. What's going on, EC? You're finally home? Because I know you and Aaron Parsegan have done such a great job of covering this from every angle, man. How is it to like wake up and not talk a little bit of the Rays Stadium until you jump on with me at 1 p.m. today?
Yeah, it's funny. I was telling my wife, I'm like, I'm so exhausted this week. And it goes back to even Sunday when the John Romano article stepped out.
Yeah.
So it's been like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like rolling over every single day, digging into this, listening to meetings, talking with people. So yeah, it's we're doing our Buccaneers preview show today. So I'm excited to like focus in on a little bit of football for once, especially with the bye week happening last week. So yeah, it's good to get a reprieve.
Make sure you check out everything that's going on with Evan and our guy David Shealy over there at Channel 10. Always doing some new, intricate ways to look at sports. They're really going above and beyond. So really, some of the best thing that we're going to have here locally on TV is with Evan and David. So definitely
Thank you
follow
for
them on
that.
all social media platforms. Always very interesting conversations that they have, looking at it, not just like, hey, we're going to talk about the highlights, looking at it from different angles, taking a
Mhm.
deep dive inside the numbers. Really, really good stuff that Evan and David and everybody over there at Channel 10 have been doing. But we'll talk some football in a bit, but just the whole Rays Stadium thing. We had Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times joining us at the top of the show. It's just so crazy how in 24 hours, right? I mean, we've talked about it that it was the last couple of days, but yeah, okay, they're gonna pay for the stadium repairs. Well, not so much. I know Aaron was live when that happened with
Mhm.
you guys. It's so crazy
That
that
was
this is where
That was
we're
a
at.
crazy situation, by the way. A little behind the curtain
Yeah, give
because
it to us. Give it to us.
Yeah, I'm listening to I'm watching and listening to the city council meeting from from my desk. We're rolling on everything, and I'm going back to our producer and I'm saying, "Hey, like they're revoting to revote," and she's like, "How am I supposed to explain that to Aaron? Aaron's about to go live in a few minutes."
Oh
I
my
was like,
god.
I was like, just tell them that they're revoting and the Tropicana field repairs might not happen. And then like I'm kind of like live. I'm just like I'm on a phone. I have one ear like listening to the meeting. I got my phone in my other ear, and Aaron has no idea what's going on because he's outside. So he's just like, he's got everything prepared. But that's like, I mean, the calamity of kind of disseminating that information to Aaron is very much the same way that it felt like watching that all unfold
Right.
and just slowly seeing kind of the confidence from the city council dwindle of how they as Brian Auld continued to talk to them of just how little faith they had in where this was going and the commitments that the Rays were going to provide to stay in the city, beyond 2025.
Yeah, and I wanted to get your opinion on that, Evan, is like where do the Rays think they're playing after 2025? If they're talking about yanking this deal, and of course the whole reason why they're talking about this deal, they want that real estate. Like to me, that's the big thing. The Rays got it in writing from both the city and the county, like, oh, you're on board. We're gonna get all this real estate, not just the stadium. Like it's going to be tough for them to like let that go. So even if they come up with a different arrangement, that's going to be in there because they feel like that is just going to be just as important, if not more important than the stadium. Because even if they sell it, right, they still have that, in their grasp. But if that's the case, after all this posturing and all this back and forth over the last couple of days, we know where they're going to play in 2025. All right, let's say they don't have a deal in place. They don't fix the roof at Tropicana Field. Where the hell do the Rays think they're going to play in 2026?
Yeah, it's not going to be in the Tampa Bay area, I'll tell you that. And that's really what kind of the messaging seems like. It was interesting in those conversations where I thought it was turning is that, they said, yes, we're going to move ahead, repair the trop seal, the roof, and we're going to try to make this thing happen in 2026 and do the best that we can. Now, before even Brian Auld said what he said about, hey, like we don't believe this is going to happen in 2026, even in a best case scenario. Richie Floyd mentioned that before. So this isn't even like a Rays kind of spin zone type of thing of where they didn't want the roof to be repaired so they can file for damages and all that stuff. And I'm sure that's very important to them and they want to do all
Right.
that stuff as well. But I think from just somebody who's also in a dissenting opinion, somebody who had experience in kind of the builds and whatnot, also was very skeptical of the timeline of how this was going to happen and how narrow it was going to be to make sure that they were ready for 2026 opening day. So the Rays were concerned because it's like, well, we don't know if this will be done in 2026, which means that you guys are trying to fit this timeline, which means you might have to pour more money into the trop to try to fit the 2026 timeline. And on our end, we also have to think of a relocation plan, which is a problematic because now we got to worry about one place over here while also being tethered to you guys potentially in 2026, but that might not happen. And maybe we have to spend half a season here and a half a season with you. And it just, they want certainty. So that's what the Rays want. The Rays want certainty moving forward. They don't want to create a million contingency plans. So that's really the big thing for them in that process was like, please kill the roof for 2026 so that we can move forward and relocate because it's not going to be in Tampa for 2025 for 2026. They are not going to continuously play in Steinbrenner Field. They're concerned about the weather. They're concerned about the capacity. They want to try to maximize revenues wherever they can, and that will sort of be where things move forward from that point. And I imagine we're going to start hearing names for relocation a lot sooner than later.
As far as like Nashville and places like that, possibly
Yeah, all that stuff. I think
Vegas.
everything's kind of in play at this point, and yeah, they just need a better venue, a bigger venue, and a city with that maybe can provide some interest in the short term while they figure out the long term path.
But would that move be a temporary move or a permanent move? Like, is there a way for, like, let's say they played 2025 in Tampa? Did they go to Raleigh, right, for a couple years, right, for 2 years, and then come back to the Bay Area? Or do you think if they leave, they're gone?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's multiple paths, which is
Hmm.
which is why it's so tough to, the number one thing that I always tell people is a lot of people look for answers of what's going to happen next, and the problem is every reaction has a different action.
Hmm.
And there are so many people out there that want to say like, oh, like this is the next thing that's going to happen. It's like it is so impossible to know that because at this point the the issue is like let's say they relocate in 2026 and it is to a Raleigh or a Nashville,
Hmm.
and then a group of investors from Tampa want to buy Stu's team. Well, at that point, they might relocate to a different area while a Tampa stadium is built, right? And so it could be a temporary move. But Major League Baseball could also be testing the waters in a certain market to see if the interest is there. And they might say, okay, well, we gave you the Rays for a few years. Things look pretty good. That might drum up some interest from local leaders. That might drum up some interest from buyers for an expansion team, and you got a little taste of baseball for a couple of years. We're going to get you your own team in 5 years down the road as we start building a stadium
Hmm.
over here. So it doesn't necessarily have to be maybe the Rays, but I do imagine that where they relocate is going to be in an area where Major
Like a
League
trial run.
Baseball is
Yeah.
exactly is interested in going. So whether that's the Rays specifically or another team, I'm not 100% sure, but I would guess that they're going to go into an area where Major League Baseball is interested in expanding one way or another.
Yeah, I know that Major League Baseball doesn't want to relocate teams. They would expand to a, like our guy Craig, who has been tuned in to Vegas, Vegas baby,
Mhm.
or like Raleigh or Nashville, something like that. But yeah, it just sucks that it's come down to all this. And
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you from your perspective because I had Chris Latvala, county commissioner, on with me earlier this week, and you kind of hear it with some of the city council members now. It seems like there's a lot of distrust between the city and the county and the Rays organization as a whole. I didn't hear from them, and the whole thing with Brian All being brought almost to the city council because he's saying something different to the local media there rather than what he's saying to the city council members. Do you think it's a big deal that Stu's not there and not involved with this? Because to me, it's like Brian and Matt are speaking on behalf of Stu Sternberg. Where do you think the level of trust is with the Rays and our city and county officials? And where do you think their thoughts are when it comes to Stu not being kind of directly involved in this?
Yeah, when it comes down to Stu, I mean, Stu is going to stew.
Yeah.
I like I say this with a grain of salt because they know exactly what they signed up for. they know exactly who they're working for. But Brian and Matt have to typically clean up the PR mess sometimes for Stu.
Right.
You know, Stu has never been one that really has nailed the messaging ever, ever.
Hmm.
Every time he steps in front of a microphone, there's something, or gives a quote, there's something that usually comes back to boomerang, and then Matt and Brian are there to kind of disseminate the message in clear rationale.
Right.
Um, and with the letter that was sent to the county, I think that was not a good move. It didn't work out the way that it was intended, and you know, it's interesting to me that Brian goes up in front of the city council and he says, you know, I thought the letter made it clear that the deal was dead on our end. I thought Stu's comments made it clear. It's like, no, no, no. Clarity is saying the deal is dead on our end and sending in a termination
Hmm.
notice. That is clarity in dissemination of information. That's not what they're doing. They're dancing around things. We're saying we're loyal to Tampa Bay. They're not loyal to Pinellas County. They're not loyal to the city of St. Petersburg. They're not saying those things. They're broad, and they're doing things in broad ways because they know they have to do it. And yeah, trust is not there. Um, it hasn't been there for a long time. They've tried their best. I mean, city leaders, Brian, Matt, Stu, they've all done what they can, but you know, this isn't the first time that, you know, a city council or a mayor or who, you know, in the past has had problems with the way that the Rays and Stu have done business. You know, and by all accounts, from people that I talk to who do business with the Rays, they think they're an amazing partner
Hmm.
and that they're very transparent in a lot of ways. So it's just really on this issue of getting the stadium is where they play hardball. And I think the line that I've always heard is that the Rays love the flirt, but they never like to settle down. And that's just kind of how they've come across when it comes to this. And I think that the Rays as an organization are extremely smart people. But when it comes to this situation and the stadium situation and how they want to really get their message across, they're not people. And when it comes to the community and it comes to connecting the dots for them, they just have always kind of missed the mark, which is why the public has always been really kind of half in, half out with the Rays because they've never truly have firmly committed to the area until recently. And then at the first step of a cost overrun, at the first glance that it was going to happen, they ran away. They
Hmm.
completely ran away. And the thought that I've been having is, you know, if the city and the county, if they can get out of this and they want to get out of it, it's kind of a good thing that everything unfolded the way that it did. Because what would have happened in a year and a half if a hurricane would have messed up the rebuild and there would have been
Right.
all these cost overruns? What were the Rays? What would they have done? What would they have done? They would have told the city and county that you got a half-built stadium, you're going to have to put up a bunch of money, and that we can't do anything else. I mean, that's the way that it looks
Hmm.
because they didn't even try. And you know, city council member Deborah Fix Sanders, she even said like, I want to approve all this stuff and I want to force them to try because right now they're not trying. They're just saying we can't do it. And I kind of understand that. I understand that the effect of like let's put their feet to the fire, but you know, it's tough.
That's not operating in good faith though, which you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, but I understand where they're coming from. But this is part of the reason why, and you know this because you're not, traditionally from here, like neither am I,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
this is why people are very hesitant to commit to the raise. It's things like this, and this is the way they do business. And you want to talk about the payroll or the lack that, the fact that you can't buy a jersey because when a guy reaches that dollar figure that they're going to get rid of them. So you can't buy a jersey because eventually a guy's going to be too good. And like this pattern of behavior throughout the entire organization, this is what they do. Like that's part of the reason why I think the Rays have really struggled in growing their fan base in the Tampa Bay area is because it's always coming down to the bottom dollar. And I understand that it's a business, but the most successful businesses out there are the ones that use some personality to it and have that human to human interaction on multiple levels that helps them be successful. There's no reason why a hockey team in the state of Florida should be the number one franchise in all of sports, like we saw in the ESPN franchise standings all those years ago in ESPN, the magazine. It wasn't a football team in the heart of Texas. It wasn't a baseball team in California. It was a hockey team in Florida. And it wasn't just because of the success on the ice. A large part of it had to do with Jeff Vinnick and all the people that he put underneath him that know, if you go to the games, everybody at Amalie Arena is like the nicest person in the world, not
Hmm.
crapping on the people that work at the Trop, but it's just everything all the way down the line. Julian Breezeball came up to me and asked me, man, so sorry that you lost your job. Steve Griggs, CEO, same thing. John Cooper, like that's the kind of people. Forget about the business side. That's the kind of
Yeah.
people they have there. And then when you have situations like this, I truly believe that this is another example of fans that have never really bought into the Rays going, that right here, that right there. That's why. Because when you have even the most fervent supporters on the city council now going, wait a second, I don't trust this. You don't want it. I mean, think about it. They approved it. That's the crazy part about it.
Yeah.
They approved it. They approved, hey, let's fix this chop. And then Brian's like, no, 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 no. So it's like, I can't want it for you. This is your home. Like, think about that. I understand that you have plans for the future, but this is where you play baseball. This is your home, Tropicana Field. Your people have offices there, and you're like, fix it, don't fix it. Like, people don't need to know all the minutia to be able to see what's going on here. It's a tough putt. So where do you see like the next step happening? What do you think that like what's the next chapter in this episode?
It's a great question. And this is where we get right back to the hypothetical game, which is where we've been for 15 some odd years in the stadium saga. And
Crazy.
and I just want to quickly just add to your point, there is there is a reason why the Lightning are who they are now. And if you go back to before Vinnick, the Lightning were a different organization then
Right.
too. And there's a difference between someone saying we're putting roots here, we're building this thing, and of course winning helps, but the Rays have done a lot of winning, and there's a reason why it hasn't had the connective tissue. So the thing is, to me personally, I do not know how Stu is not going to sell. And let me explain why. Unless a city out there is going to give $1 billion for a stadium to Stu
Mm-hmm.
Sternberg, who by the way has proven time and time again he's not the most trustworthy actor. Like, I'm sorry, when you do the song and dances that you just did, they just pulled out of a stadium deal when they said they were going to be on for cost overruns. They did it the first chance they got. I don't understand why other city and county leaders would not be scared by giving
Right.
$1 billion to that individual. And let me tell you, the deal that was made was about 600 some odd $1 million for the city and county officials to give to the Rays. And the Rays were going to be on the hook for $700 million in cost overruns. It was pretty close to 50-50. Wherever you stand on it is wherever you stand on it. But it was a pretty great deal for the Rays considering they had the redevelopment rights and
Right.
they were going to get all the revenue from the Trop or whatever it was going to be called, so on and so forth. Now you're telling me they're bleeding money. Their revenue projections are way off. They don't have the money to fund any of the cost overruns. So where are they moving? Where are they building?
Right.
Who is giving them the money that's going to say, "Here's $1 billion, kick in 300 mil"? I don't see it. I don't see it. To me, I think the plan is the future is for the Rays that Stu's going to sell. He flirted with selling before the stadium deal. Rumors, at least, rumors were he was flirting with sellers before this. They were trying to raise capital. I don't know how someone is not going to say, I'm not taking on your organization without you giving me the reins. And
Right.
I also think that some of his previous talks, and this is my opinion, I also think some of his previous talks fell apart because he was going to keep the team in St. Pete, get that deal, and some significant buyers out there didn't want that. That
Right.
wasn't the plan that they saw in their head for what they wanted to do, and it kind of fell apart. So to me, I think we go back to the the ground level of Stu probably looking for a seller. I'm sure he'll try to do the look for equity thing, try to
Mm-hmm.
find someone out there thing, but he doesn't have any time. The Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred already came out and said we need an idea of where a permanent home will be by 2026. Essentially, he's got about a year to workshop that. The clock is done. You know,
Mhm.
his clock is over. He pushed this sucker all the way until the final beat, and he thought he had a deal. And an act of God happened. Financials changed, and he had to pivot. And now he's going to have to pivot real quick. And we'll see if a city is extremely desperate enough to get a team to where they'll present this Herculean offer. But at this point, Major League Baseball has not allowed him to search for other suitors. They still have remained steadfast in wanting to stay in the Tampa Bay area. So let's see if something materializes in Tampa, because I have a really hard time believing
Right.
anything is going to happen in St. Pete. It looks like that path at this juncture, it looks like it's so dead in the water with how the Rays kind of set fire to that relationship.
Incredible stuff. Make sure you follow him. I got Matt Grothy coming on here in a second. We'll talk some Buccaneers next time I have you on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Closky, WTSP. Check him out on Twitter/X. All the great work at 10 Tampa Bay. Give my love to David and Aaron and the entire crew, brother.
Will
Enjoy
do.
your weekend. We'll talk soon. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you. I'll see you soon.